Did you know that most people make at least one of these 11 camera buying mistakes? And this makes them either spend too much money up front or it ends up costing them a lot more money at the end when they have to upgrade. Personally, I made a lot of these mistakes, so I put together this video to help you avoid the most common camera buying mistakes. I'm going to specifically highlight 3 critical mistakes. The majority of the time that's used for shopping for a camera is spent on comparing specs, watching reviews, and then looking at content that was created using the different cameras so that you can get a sense of what's possible to create with each camera. But most of the time, people don't think of the ergonomics of the camera, which is the first of the 3 critical mistakes. Think about it this way. Are you getting the buttons and dials that you need? Are they positioned in a way that's easy for you to use? Is the camera too big or too small for your hands? And does the grip feel comfortable? Like, these are the types of things that you should find out before you spend a ton of money on a camera. Now, I know not everyone has a camera store that's near them, but if you have a chance, I can't overstate how important it is to physically handle a camera before you buy it. And if you can't find the exact model that you're looking for, try to get a sense of the ergonomics by testing out something that's similar. Small cameras, for example, are light and portable, which makes them great travel cameras, but it can make them challenging to handle. A bigger camera and lens combo like this one can give you great results, but could be too heavy and too cumbersome to bring with you, so you end up leaving it behind. You hear people say that the best camera is the one you have with you. And if the camera and lens combo that you choose is not comfortable, or if it's just inconvenient for you to bring, you just simply won't do it, and then it just becomes useless. Now, there's another aspect of ergonomics which I'm actually making its own point because it's just so important, and I'm talking about the way that the camera screen rotates. So the LCD screen on the back of the camera is used to preview your framing, to navigate the menu, and to change settings. Now, if you're always behind the camera, this is relatively simple, but depending on what you're doing, you may be to the side of the camera, above it, below it, or even in front of it. And if you're working alone, it's super important that you're able to see the screen. Now, there are different options here. So some cameras have a fixed screen. It doesn't rotate at all. Some of them have a tilt screen that you can tilt up or down. This is great when you're always behind the camera and you want some versatility with a very compact setup. Some cameras have a flip screen that you can flip completely to face the front. And this is a great option if you're vlogging and you need to constantly reference how you're framed. Now, other cameras like this one have a fully articulating screen, and that way you can sort of rotate it to position and then face any direction that you want. Now, this is the most versatile option because you can always rotate it to face you regardless of where you're standing. Now, the next mistake I want to talk about is thinking that you have to have a full frame sensor camera in order to have great quality. And I don't want you to get me wrong, there are advantages for getting a larger sensor. There are things like being able to get a wider angle of view or a shallower depth of field, but things like your choice of lenses, understanding how to frame a shot, the relationship between the camera, the subject, and the background, things like that are going to impact your photo or video a lot more than just a larger sensor. Spend some time looking around and you'll see absolutely incredible photos and videos that are shot with smaller sensors like Micro Four Thirds, APS-C, and Super 35. And personally, the majority of the content that's shot for this channel isn't shot on a full frame sensor camera. Another mistake that a lot of users make is overvaluing low light performance and undervaluing lighting. So basically, if a camera is good in low light, it means that you can raise the ISO to make the image brighter without introducing a ton of noise. And if you're not familiar with it, noise is that grain that you see in photos or video, which can take away from the clarity of the image. So a camera that's good in low light can take a less noisy image with the same amount of light, but that doesn't make the image any better. There's just less noise. So if your subject isn't properly lit, it won't magically give you amazing lighting like you see in movies and in professional photos. That brings me to the second part, which is undervaluing lighting. Lighting is what makes or breaks your image. I will always take better lighting and a worse camera and lens instead of a better camera and lens in bad lighting. And if you want to learn more, I made a very simple lighting tutorial to teach you the basics. The next mistake that people make is buying a camera body that's too expensive for their budget. If you want to make videos, for example, and you said that your camera budget is $2,000, you shouldn't be looking at camera bodies that cost around $2,000. If that's your total budget, then you need to account for things like lenses, memory cards, spare batteries, maybe lighting, a tripod, a bag, filters. If you're shooting video, you're gonna absolutely want a microphone so you can get better audio. And the camera itself is only one part. And that brings me to a related mistake, which is not spending enough money on lenses. Better lenses are more important than a better camera. The sensor can only capture the image that's being projected through the lens. So if your lens doesn't open wide enough to let in enough light or to create the depth of field that you want, if the optical elements create distortion or artifacts, or if the lens doesn't focus well, that's gonna have a huge impact on your final image. There's an old saying that says that you date your camera bodies, but you marry your lenses. And I want you to think about it this way. A lens that's great today is still going to be great 5 or 10 years from now. I still use lenses that I bought more than 10 years ago. I went through a lot of different camera bodies at the same time, but there's no reason for me to replace those lenses. Now, lenses are also a major component of the next mistake, which is not considering your upgrade path. When you buy a camera, you're actually buying into a lens system. So each camera has a lens mount, and lenses are designed to fit a specific mount. Now, there are adapters in some cases, but to make sure that you get the full functionality, the best speed, and the best results, you'll want to use lenses that are designed for the camera mount that you're using whenever possible. But what happens when you want to upgrade your camera? Can you reuse your lenses? I'm not talking about switching brands, because in that case, it's extremely likely that you will be replacing all your lenses. But if you want to move up from APS-C to full frame lenses, will your current lenses fit? So whatever you end up doing, at least ask that question so that you can make an informed buying decision. And speaking of buying, the next mistake that I see all the time is being distracted by good deals. A lot of times, different sellers will package a camera with a few lenses and some accessories and then show you how much money you're saving by getting that package. Now, sometimes that's a good deal, but sometimes it's not. If the accessories aren't ones that are gonna work for you, or if the lenses aren't the ones that you need, then you'll just end up spending more money when you replace them. Remember that I finish every video by saying buy it nice or buy it twice, and this is a perfect example. Now, the next mistake is the second critical mistake that I see happen all the time, and I'm talking about buying a camera that's based on other people's needs. Now, that might sound a little funny, but a lot of people listen to other users who have completely different needs from their own. So cameras are tools, and there's no single camera that's inherently better for every use. So for example, my friend James owns a media company, and they shoot a lot of their content on Arri Alexa, which is an amazing camera. But does that make it a good choice for me and for what I do? Even if I put aside the cost, it's just not the right tool for me. I shoot alone, I'm in front of the camera, I want features like autofocus, and I need something that's portable. And even within my own gear, is the A7S III a better camera than my ZV-1? I don't know, it's more capable, so if I'm prioritizing image quality and features and versatility, sure, it's A7S III all day, but if I'm running around town and I need something that I can fit in my pocket with a tripod, then be able to quickly set it up, get my shot, and move on without drawing a lot of attention to myself, then I'm taking my ZV-1. So remember to think about what you're going to use your camera for, and then make sure that the advice you take fits your needs. Now, this segues right into the next mistake, which is getting fixated on what I call a binary feature. So to me, a binary feature is something that I gotta have. If the camera doesn't have it, I'm not buying it. It's that simple. But the tricky part is that it could be good and bad, which can get confusing. So let's start with an example of when it's good. I know that my videos take more than 30 minutes to record, so I need a camera that doesn't have a 30-minute record limit. I know that I can get an external recorder like the Atomos Ninja 5 and an SSD, and I can get unlimited recording that way. But that adds complexity and friction to the creative process. This has nothing to do with the Atomos. It's a great product, I have one, and I use it in a lot of situations where it improves my experience. But if all I needed was unlimited recording, I want to have that feature in camera. The same is true for a clean HDMI out. If you want a live stream, I highly recommend that you get a camera that has this feature. There are workarounds, of course, but for the best quality and the best experience, it's definitely the way to go. So that was the good part, because you're thinking about your actual experience and use case. But what about an example where it's bad? Well, that can happen when you do the same thing about a feature that isn't really critical for you, and then you end up spending more money than you should. Most people, for example, don't need things like 4K 120 frames per second, or 5K or 8K, or a 61 megapixel sensor. Now, are there advantages to having those features? Absolutely, for the right user in the right situation. But if you're just starting out and you think that you can't be successful on YouTube without 4K 120, or that you can't be a professional photographer without a 61 megapixel sensor, that's just simply not true. This sort of ties into the third critical mistake that I see a lot of people make when upgrading their gear, and that's the idea that great gear equals great content. If you shoot a scene that's poorly framed and with poor lighting, and the only thing you change is going from 1080p to 4K, or from a 24 megapixel sensor to a 33 megapixel sensor, all you'll have is a bigger, equally bad photo or video with a little more detail. You're much better off taking the time to learn about your gear, composition, lighting, editing, and the various other aspects that contribute to a great final product. Then experimenting and practicing these elements will improve your skills so that when you spend money on an upgrade, you're doing it for the right reasons. And by the way, if you have other mistakes that you want to share, please put them in the comments section. Now you should watch this super and quick lighting tutorial. Hopefully this video was helpful. You know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.